right, well, welcome. So glad to see everyone here. We don't have the choir with us yet, so we could open with a freedom song. And so if you know this, sing along. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, that was a little anemic. Let's try it one more time. I don't care if you're off key. I don't care if you think your voice is terrible. How did we wake up this morning? Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Justice. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. All right. Nilo, if you want to talk a little bit about housekeeping, bathrooms, resource table, etc., etc.
Hi, welcome everyone. We're really happy to see you all here. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, this town hall was organized with Leslie from the Poor People's Campaign. And as well as Indivisible Common Ground OFA, which is a group of citizens of Jackson County and the surrounding areas. We came together last year as part of Indivisible, the Women's March, and Organizing for Action. We're working together to implement progressive change in our community as well as in our nation. So the other sponsor of this organization is the Jackson County NAACP, and Enrique, who is the president, will say a few words as well.
All right, thank you so much. All right. 50 years ago, we lost one of the towering figures in the history of the United States, and that is the loss of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated on April of 1968. And he was there in Memphis to support a strike of sanitation workers while he was in the midst of something called the Poor People's Campaign, which we are reviving now last year and this year with the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. And he was proposing at the time the equivalent of a Marshall Plan to lift millions out of poverty. But this did not happen. And today, there are 15 million Americans more living below the poverty level than there were in 1968. 40 million people, our fellow Americans, who are suffering, 20 million of them who are suffering extreme poverty. The majority of these folks, women and children, people in minorities, but yes, quite a few whites as well. And it is no mystery that we as a country are in the wrong path. A moral revival is necessary to save the heart and soul of our democracy. And now we have a movement that is leading the argument, leading and pushing back on something called now the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival led by the Bishop, Reverend Dr. William Barber II and Reverend Dr. Lister Harris, that they are going throughout southern communities and elsewhere in the country reclaiming the moral narrative. We are a movement that asserts that people should not live in or die from poverty in the richest country in the world. We reject explanations that blame the poor when there is an abundance of resources to overcome poverty. We recognize the centrality of systemic racism in maintaining economic oppression, which must be denounced empirically, morally, and spiritually, because we recognize that poverty and economic inequality cannot be understood apart from a society built on white supremacy. And we propose that the answer is to build a fusion movement of black, white, and brown people cutting across political affiliations and faith traditions from the ground up, that proposes real solutions to the problems of poverty, food insecurity, income inequality, systemic racism, the war economy, and ecological devastation. We believe that such a fusion movement can articulate a new moral vision for the country. Building and sustaining that fusion coalition is how we sustain this work. It is how we do the work to radically change the historical trajectory of the nation. It is how we build on the tradition of resistance built up by previous generations of Americans of all races. And this is how we experience the arc of the universe bending towards justice. So we are very happy to welcome the Poor People's Campaign in Jackson County and in Western North Carolina. We are very happy to support this work, and I invite you to join the campaign, to join through partnering organizations such as the local branch of the NAACP. We have membership signups as well. We have several organizations as well, including Indivisible's Common Ground here in Sylva. Let's see, what organizations? We have CCAT over there. We have Circles of Hope. We have any number. We have Clean Slate back there. Please yell out if there is an organization here present that's missing. You know, this... Oh, Carry Coalition. Oh, yes, of course. Yes, we need those organizations because we are members of civil society working together to bring up the movement and do the transformative work. The transformative work that now young people have taken on. And it is us to listen to the voices that have not been heard. And this is why we have this tonight. Thank you so much. Let's see if we can have a great town hall. Thank you, Leslie.
Wow, so now I don't have to read the 11 principles because you kind of did that. Thank you so much. Now, Bo, your last name? Lasia. We'll offer a Cherokee prayer. Thank you again.
Shegadino, I'm going to read something a little for you. Okay, first. So I guess in regards to what was just said, just a little bit of offering. Okay? So.
Hey, Bo, put the
Here there. Nigada Kandagesha, Nije Yanehan, Nashke, it's a done a de. There's a long with Stanehan, Diji Stelan de ye. Dine Wane Galan, Ale, Ijanada di Stie, Juneje, Uganwe Yohejisha. He a Jinu we she Utle Oxion Adanta diste. Yadan neha Eshkagmo Yadan ni neha. I have showed you many things, how so laboring ye ought to support the weak, and to remember the words of the Lord Jesus, he said. It is more blessed to give than to receive. It's Alejandro. Means let's just all stand. Okido Galan Lahi, our Father who art in heaven. Galan go to you o Jeto. It's an honor to be here. Dogandangi Yigi, Dogandando Yigi, Gesheste, Shogoha. Let our hearts be one. Ojale Helega, Koega. We are thankful for this moment. Nigo Hila, Nole Nogo, forever and for now. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Come on.
Thank you so much. All right, if you want to know more The first thing you need to do is check in here using the hashtags, hashtag Poor People's Campaign, hashtag Moral Movement, hashtag Moral Revival. And to know more, to get on the texting list, you can text the word action to 90975. And I'll announce that again several times through this so you don't get too lost. Again, action to 90975. Now, I want to welcome you to the Jackson County Town Hall for the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. We encourage you to use Facebook Live for portions or all of the program today, and we encourage you to use any and all social media to get the word out that we are here and we're working for justice, economic justice, social justice, racial justice. We're here today because people are hungry, people are homeless, people are cold and sick, and our nation's wealth is being directed to the few wealthiest who already have more than they can spend in a dozen lifetimes. We're here because it takes 3 minimum wage jobs to make a decent living. We're here because people are being sent to wars around the world and then they're not cared for when they come home. We're here because the few are poisoning the planet for all of us. We're here because people are in jail for months on end for want of bail money and because they leave jail deep in debt because justice is for sale to the highest bidder. We're here because people who work full-time can't afford the basic necessities, and then they're accused of being lazy because they need help to make ends meet. We're here because LGBTQ people still face hate and discrimination. We're here because the first question in a doctor's office or a hospital should never be, how are you paying? We're here because we know poor people aren't lazy and that nobody really wants a handout. 50 years ago, on December 4th, 1967, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King proposed a movement that would expand beyond racial justice to include economic and social justice. Dr. King died on April 4th, 1968, before that could become a reality. But now, a half century later, we're called by new leaders, the Reverend Dr. William Barber II and the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, to stand up for a moral solution to the problems of economic, social, and racial injustice. We are called to work toward a more just nation in a time of deep injustice. We're organizing for a national movement to call attention to this injustice with massive actions across the nation, beginning on Mother's Day and stretching for 40 days. We're called to speak truth to power, to put our bodies on the line. Many of us are called to risk arrest by taking part in nonviolent civil disobedience. Not all of us need risk arrest. There are many jobs, not the least important of which is to offer support for those being arrested. We need food and drink when we come out of jail. We need rides back to our cars. We need people we can trust to hold on to our valuables while we're in jail. We need people who can make telephone calls and help us get the word out. There are any number of jobs for us to do. Never think any contribution you can give to this movement is unimportant. Every bit of this work is essential to the effort to achieve a more just society. Thank you for coming. Thank you for signing on. And as they chant when we're being hauled off to jail, thank you, we love you. It's hard for me to get through that thank you, we love you without tearing up, because I've heard it 4 times now. I've been arrested 4 times, 3 in Raleigh and 1 in Washington. And I'm going to be free from the shackles of that arrest as of tomorrow, so I can get arrested again. And I will keep doing this because, people may think I'm insane because I keep doing it over and over again. But when I do, I've had police officers say to me, thank you. Police officers who a week before never would have thought they'd be thanking somebody they were arresting. We are here to do the right thing. We are here to stand up for justice. So I'm going to have these cards handed out. There's pens. If you need a pen, just let whoever's handing them out know. And this is how you sign on to the Poor People's Campaign. You can sign on to risk arrest. You can sign on saying, I can't do civil disobedience. You have choices of helping to mobilize your community, either faith or school or whatever. You make a financial donation, use social media to publicize the campaign, and sign up to receive text messages. 2 things on this. Please write as legibly as you can. Somebody has to read this to type it into a spreadsheet. And I'm telling you from experience, it's got to be legible. And number 2, if you want to hear from us, you need to include your phone number and or your email. I can't tell you how many cards I've looked at that said, sign me up to receive text message updates, and not put their phone number on the card. We're not psychic. We have a lot of power, but that's not one of our powers. So if you would hand those out. And what did I do with my... All right. So let me just quickly, while that's being passed out, go over some of the fundamental principles. We are rooted in a moral analysis based on our deepest religion and constitutional values that demand justice for all. Moral revival is necessary to save the heart and soul of our democracy. All of these, by the way, there's 11 of them, and they are all on the website, poorpeoplescampaign.org. You can find anything you need to know there. Number 2, we're committed to lifting up and deepening the leadership of those most affected by systemic racism, poverty, the war economy, and ecological devastation, and to building unity across lines of division. In other words, they're not going to separate us anymore. We're one. We are the people, and we will work together to lift everyone up. Number 3, we believe in the dismantling of unjust criminalization systems that exploit poor communities and communities of color, and the transformation of the war economy into a peace economy that values all humanity. We believe that equal protection under the law is non-negotiable. We believe that people should not live in or die from poverty in the richest nation ever to exist. Blaming the poor and claiming that the United States does not have an abundance of resources to overcome poverty are false narratives used to perpetuate economic exploitation, exclusion, and deep inequality. I'll read more of them later. But next, I think Patty Curtis, St. John's Episcopal, is going to speak to us a little bit about the morality or immorality of the way things exist. Both. Oh, good.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Better. Thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody who brought us here today. The NAACP group, Indivisible, Common Ground. Who else am I forgetting? Clean Slate, Canary Coalition, everyone who brought us together. It's really great to see so many faces here. So I was scrolling through Facebook earlier today, and our friend Mary McLaughlin, who I don't see here today, shared something on Facebook that she had posted a year or so ago from Father James Martin. He's a Roman Catholic priest, a Jesuit. We love the Jesuits.
They're cool.
And they are cool. And he gets in trouble a lot for opening his mouth and saying what he thinks. But he said this: I will never understand how politicians who call themselves Christian can read the Gospels and then treat the poor and the sick like dirt. Isn't that true? So as a follower of Jesus, we are all to follow, those of us who follow Jesus, are to follow in his footsteps. He came to show us how to live. He came to show us how to live with each other. He came to show us how to love each other. He came to show us how to see the inherent dignity in every person. Jesus fed the hungry. Jesus healed the sick. He nourished bodies and souls. But Jesus also called out the religious and the political leaders of his day, those who wanted to maintain the status quo and perpetuate injustice and oppression. And he called them out as well as providing food for the hungry and healing the sick. Now, I think that we as churches, the churches that I'm standing here sort of representing today, I think we do a pretty good job of providing food for the hungry, trying to find shelter for those who are homeless. But I think we can do a much better job by calling out and challenging those leaders, state and local and federal leaders, who want the system to stay where it is, who want to perpetuate the status quo. It's fine to provide food for the hungry, but we are also to look upstream and challenge those systems that keep people hungry, that keep people oppressed, that keep people homeless, that keep people one medical bill away from bankruptcy in this country. So that is why we are here today. That is why I am here today. Because these are not simply political issues. These are, as Reverend Barber says all the time, these are moral issues. And as Bo so beautifully prayed today, we should all be of one heart on that. Can I hear that? We should all be of one heart on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I want to remind anybody who's coming up to speak that this wire is here because this is a very old amplifier and it doesn't have Bluetooth. So I almost just tripped on it and I knew it was there, so please be careful. Let me read another of the fundamental principles. We believe that people should not live or die. Oh, wait a minute, we already read that one. We recognize the centrality of systemic racism in maintaining economic oppression must be named, detailed, and exposed empirically, morally, and spiritually. Poverty and economic inequality cannot be understood apart from a society built on white supremacy. And now, Ron Robinson from Circles of Hope. There you are.
I'm here.
I'm glad you're coming up this way because you could trip on that.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ron Robinson, Chair of the Board for Circles of Hope, and thank you all for being here and inviting me to be here. I have to tell you, I haven't been in front of so many big-hearted people with best of intentions in quite a while, and it's an absolute pleasure being here. I thank you. I've had some good news today, some really good news. Have your children ever just sat around and you thought, why don't they get out and march? My son today in Seattle just texted me that he's marching in Seattle today. Now, can we give a big shout out to all the people in Asheville, to all the people in Washington that are standing up to the NRA? Can we give them a hand? Maybe the tide is changing. What's that?
Franklin is marching too.
Franklin. God bless Franklin. I'd like to introduce two people. John Painter over here is going to be speaking in a couple of minutes. He's working his way out of poverty. We have Chaz Warren, who's our new program director for Circles of Hope also. I want to talk to you about poverty in Jackson County for a moment. Just a few stats. We have 42,000 people in Jackson County. We have 24.5% poverty, which translates into approximately 10,000 people in poverty. 10,000 people in poverty. The median income in Jackson County is $35,000 for a family. The cost of living in Jackson County is $44,000. So go figure. Why do we have poverty in Jackson County? $44,000 cost of living, the median income, that means half or more, half or less, are earning $35,000. The goal of Circles USA and Circles in Jackson County is to reduce poverty by 10%. We see this as an economic development issue as much as a moral issue. Reducing poverty by 10% means we're working on 1,000 people over the course of the next few years. Think about the Ramsey Center, you all. If the Ramsey Center was full of poor people, we'd still have 1,000 people standing outside waiting to get in. That's how many people we have in this county, just to draw a picture. What are the causes? There's 2 causes for poverty. I'm sure you can tell me a dozen other causes. But at the core of poverty, there are 2 key issues, and Patty mentioned one of them. It has to do with systems. One is low wages. We did a survey of the businesses in this area. Of 80 businesses, 38% pay a living wage. 38%. The paying of low wages is a key part of the poverty issue. The other part is something called the cliff effect. Think about this a moment. How many of you know of a young mother with 1 or 2 children who's offered a raise by her boss and says, no, I can't take it? Anybody know? Anybody heard that story before?
I think so.
Do you know why that is? It's because if she takes 10 cents more for a raise, she loses her child care voucher.
That's right. That happened to me.
And it happened to you.
It did.
It's called the cliff effect. In our country, with the benefit system that's set up, it's set up to cause people to fail. A young mother is not going to deny her children child care and loss of income. So she's stuck. And many people are stuck because of this cliff effect that cuts off benefits at a certain point, and you either have to fall back into the system or struggle mightily. So low wages and cliff effect. I want to offer you several solutions. Don't want to come without solutions. In Jackson County, the one thing I would offer you to think about and fight for is a living wage. A living wage is $12 to $15. Now, a living wage starts with every one of us in this room. Anytime we bring somebody into our home to help us, think about how much we're paying them. 12 to 15. 12 to 15. If any of us are paying people less than $12, we're perpetuating poverty in Jackson County. So it begins with us. And think about the people that you work with, your friends and neighbors. If they're hiring people to do child care or work in the yard, how much are they paying them? If they're not paying them 12 to 15 an hour, ask them to think about it. If you frequent businesses that pay $12 an hour, that pay people a living wage. If they don't, ask them why and talk to them about the benefit of it. Another solution is community collaboration. Right now in Jackson County, nonprofits and public service agencies are starting to get together to support continuum of care. We meet the 5th Tuesday of each month that has a 5th Tuesday. And that's at City Lights Bookstore, City Lights Cafe, 12 o'clock, that 5th Tuesday, and you're all invited to come if you represent a nonprofit or a public service agency. And the whole point is to start talking about how we can work together to help each other better serve the community. I want to talk to you about Circles of Hope, how Circles of Hope brings people out of poverty. We provide training and mentoring to help people in poverty get out. Nationally, in a survey that we've just completed, nationally, I want you to think about this. The first 16 months that the cohort, the national cohort, has been in the program, they have realized a 40% increase in income. Nationally, 40% increase in income over 16 months. Jackson County, For that same period of time, it hasn't been 40%. It's been 80%. 80%. And somebody's going to be talking to you about that right now. It's a proven method. It's called community support. It engages the whole community to help people in poverty. And finally, policy. Let me ask you to think about policy. We've got elections coming up. And I'm asking you not to think about your candidates based on whether they're your friend, whether or not they're married to X, Y, and Z, or who you know in the community. Forget it. Forget whether they're a Democrat, Republican, or independent. The issue in this election is policy. And it doesn't matter whether they're red, blue, or whatever, it's policy. And let me offer you 3 policies that are critical to eliminating or at least putting a dent in poverty in Jackson County and our state. The first is addressing the cliff effect. Instead of having a policy in which everybody's cut off at a certain point, set up that policy, set up those grants so that people are gradually let off of the grant, and that way they have a better chance of building a nest egg and building some sustainability in their lives. And secondly, do not accept a politician avoiding the question, do you support a minimum wage? And by minimum wage, we're talking about 12 to 15 an hour. If they will give you the runaround, don't vote for them. This is too important. And finally, I'd like for you all to think about something that comes from Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King believed in the things that we're doing here today, meeting and talking and understanding the moral issues of our country. But Martin Luther King also believed in something else. And as one person put it, it's called making lives miserable. When he did boycotts, he was doing more than speaking. He was making lives miserable for people who were opposed to his positions on fairness, on justice. When there were sit-ins, that wasn't just speaking out. That was taking action. It was making lives miserable. And let me offer to you this thought. Whether it's a politician, whether it's a person of influence, whether it's a candidate, we can't just talk about it. It's critically important that if somebody is getting in the way of morality, getting in the way of getting people out of poverty, that we make their lives miserable.
In a nonviolent way.
In a nonviolent way, thank you. Of course.
Just wanted to make sure that was.
Well, bless your heart. I need lots of help. Finally, let me just mention to you that we're like many other nonprofits. We have a fundraiser each year, and like the rest of the nonprofits, we feed you and then ask you to open your wallet. And our nonprofit luncheon is going to be May the 2nd. It's at the First United Methodist Church, and it's at 12 o'clock. So you're all invited to come and share and learn more about how some proven methods for getting people out of poverty. And now I'd like to introduce to you John Painter, who's going to talk to you about getting out of poverty. John.
And while John makes its way up, let me just say something. A lot of times you hear people say that minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. Yes, it was. Just counter them with, yes, it was, because usually they'll back off. And the other thing is, if minimum wage had kept pace with inflation, a living wage would not be $12 to $15, but $23 to $24. That's what we need. There you go, John. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Painter. I'm here today on the behalf of Circles of Hope. I come to be a member of Circles of Hope because of poverty. I come from generational poverty and have been battling it most of my life, all of my life technically. But so I was approached by Circles of Hope, and they asked me if I wanted to be a part of their program. I was a little skeptical at first, but I thought, well, I might as well try and see what happens, and if it's for me, it's for me. If it's not, we'll see how it goes. Upon joining Circles of Hope, I have did their 12-week course, which has allowed me, I'm a circle leader there now, has allowed me to take educational classes, which in my case helped me to not only better my education, but also set me up for a path to go into a better job opportunities. And these are job opportunities which pay a living wage, much better than a minimum wage, which helps a person such as myself who has been in poverty to come out of poverty and to do better and be more of a functioning member of society. It's helped me to learn to network as well, because I didn't talk to a lot of people and do a lot of things, but it's helped me to come out of my shell a little bit and to network. And the people of Circles of Hope have been genuinely good people who want to help the community and the people within it. And they have helped me to network. They have given me training, and I've made friends along the way. And by doing Circles of Hope, they help you to set goals, and once you have been through the training, you've set the goals and committed to doing circles like a job, and you show up on time, you communicate, and you do what's asked of you, and positive results happen from that. Circles of Hope also helped me with a savings account, which, being in poverty, it's hard to have savings because you're living day to day and bills are always there and money's not. So they did a match savings program with me, which they said if you will save $25 and put that into this match savings account, we will match that. And upon doing this match savings program, it has allowed me to have a nest egg, or something like Ron's talking about, which when life happens, situations happen, you have something to kind of fall back on to help you through a situation. And by doing this, I have managed to save around $700, which is a lot when you're used to dealing with a little. So with that being said, I've bettered my education. I wanted to do outdoor leadership, and that is a really prominent thing in our area here. Take people out and do fun things in the outdoors. Let them have fun, you have fun, and everybody get paid. So,
Oh, you get paid anyway.
But upon doing that, I have managed to get a job with a group that does outdoor leadership stuff and activities. And I have received training by being a Circles of Hope member. I come into that. So I've got training towards something I wanted to do as a goal, and I have been able to get a part-time job with a living wage from that company, as well as other jobs through Circles who have been people who paid a living wage. So with that being said, I want to thank Circles of Hope and what they fight for and strive to do within the community. Thank you all very much.
Wow. So you see, it is possible. It is possible to give people skills that they need and to put them on the path of being able to help themselves. I've worked with people in poverty most of my adult life. I've never met anyone who just wanted a handout. I think we all just want the dignity of being able to pay our bills in exchange for a week's work. And I think that's a contract that needs to be reestablished. Next we have Connie Conklin, who's going to talk to us about her experience with homelessness. And while she makes her way up, we aim to shift the distorted moral narrative often promoted by religious extremists in the nation from issues like prayer in school, abortion, and gun rights to one that is concerned with how our society treats the poor, those on the margins, the least of these, LGBTQ folks, workers, immigrants, the disabled and the sick, equality and representation under the law, and the desire for peace, love, and harmony within and among nations. That's the 7th of our 11 principles. Connie. Okay, just hold the microphone close.
Yeah, can shuffle cards up. So, I'll do it.
Do you want, here, I'll hold the mic while you talk. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I think I can do it. I can just slide it at the table.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. All right. My name is Connie, and I've been asked to tell you what it feels like to be homeless. For me, it brings back memories from my childhood of being worthless, empty, unloved, and alone, like I was nothing but a burden to others and didn't deserve to exist. The fact that I've always been chicken to end my life caused shame to multiply, as I'm a survivor of child abuse. I've worked many, many, many decades towards my recovery. For me, the hardest part is that every time I make progress towards my recovery and I start feeling comfortable in my community, I start feeling safe, something falls apart and housing ends, and it's like I'm starting all over again on my recovery. I've been homeless many times, most of those in recent years. It's harder as I'm older and my health is not well. I've been without transportation, making it impossible to see doctors and get health care. When I tried to get health care at one of our for-profit hospitals in the surrounding counties, I got escorted out of the building by a giant, very scary security guard because I owed them money. I've been homeless because as a survivor, I don't fit well into this world. I still struggle from time to time what to do, what to say, what is expected of me. I get defensive and take things wrong, take things personally sometimes, when sometimes they're not meant that way. And for those, a lot of people think that we're just lazy people or don't care. Well, I worked very hard to work my way through college. I paid for every dime of it except the first $100, which the Kiwanis Club gave me when I graduated. The school thought I should be going to college. My parents didn't believe in education. I taught school. I taught learning disabled and emotionally disturbed middle school and high school. And then I became a mental health professional when I finished my master's. But all that time, I was emotionally numb and my memories were blocked. Memories came when I got divorced in 1982. That's when I started working on my recovery. As a child, I was never allowed to think for myself. My husband tried to encourage it, but he wasn't very successful. But once he was gone, I had to learn to think for myself for the first time ever. And that's when I had to start. Memories started to come back after a while. With memories came immense pain and lots of anger. I started to receive Social Security disability in 1994. I can't live in public housing. Because of my PTSD symptoms, there's always things that trigger it. And I have breathing problems around cigarettes, and there's always smokers. When Section 8 paid more money, I could live in the community. I did pretty good. I had an awesome place in Dillsboro for 5 years. I wouldn't have the recovery if I hadn't had that. But the rent had to go up, and Section 8 had gone down on what they were willing to pay. There's nothing to rent for $400 a month. During that time, I did manage to found an organization. My organization is CSCAT, and it stands for Supportive Environment for Adult Survivors of Child Abuse and Trauma. And we were inspired in the 1990s, founded in 2008, and this year, 20 years later, I thought we finally were going to be able to get our 501c3. We've got some good board members, and it would be possible, but housing's still a problem. There's 2 of us that are struggling with housing on our board of directors. I was asked to tell you how I came to create CSCAT through my recovery, and for me it was just the logical next step. I I couldn't accept all the things that have happened to me if I didn't do something with it, with what I've learned. One of my favorite quotes is Leo Roston, who says, the purpose of life is to matter, to have it make a difference, that you lived at all. And I heard Reverend Barber a Moral Monday in Asheville say, apathy is moral suicide. And beyond that, there's even a bigger reason. 80% of child abuse occurs in the home by a parent or guardian. That leaves us with no concept of what is normal, no idea how to function in the real world. It's still a struggle to unlearn, the coping skills we learned as a child don't work in the real world. And we have to unlearn everything and relearn it all. I'm 65 years old, and it's still a struggle. Anyways, CSCAT has sign-up sheets on the table back there if you're interested in finding out more. If you have a civic or community group or a church that would like a speaker, we've got an educational program and different aspects that you're welcome to, we can speak on. I hope I get some phone calls. And sign up at the back table. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I know a lot of times people who live in poverty don't want to speak about it because our society is so good at telling poor people that it's their fault and that they are morally inferior, when in reality, it is those doing the keeping down who are morally inferior. It is time for us to stand up, reach out to people we know in poverty, and let them know, no, it's not your fault. You're not inferior. You're not lazy. We know that. We get that. We're fighting for you. And that's what we're doing here. One of the biggest problems, and I can remember this from when I was little and I was living in poverty, I remember nights when my parents weren't hungry and didn't eat dinner. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I discovered they were hungry, but there wasn't enough food for all of us, so they went to bed without. We had pancakes and Spam, they went to bed without. This is not moral in a land of plenty. And so, Nilofer, would you come up and talk to us a little bit about food insecurity?
I'm Nilofer Couture, and I'm a registered dietitian and the manager of the nutrition department at the Cherokee Hospital. I want to talk about the problem of hunger in America. It's really a shame and a scandal that there are hungry people in America, undernourished children and elderly citizens who never get a decent meal. We're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but we still can't feed everyone. 12.7% of the population, that's 43 million people, struggles with hunger. 13 million are children, more than 5 million are seniors. At 15.4%, North Carolina has a poverty rate that's even higher than the national average. So who is poor? According to the government, you are poor if you're an individual with an income who makes less than $12,486, or a family of 4 with an income of $24,339. The USDA defines hunger in terms of food insecurity. A household that is food insecure has limited or uncertain access to food to support a healthy life. In North Carolina, 5.7% of people face hunger. That's 1 in 6 people, 1 in 4 children, or 1 in 10 seniors who don't have enough to eat. It's truly shocking that in the world's greatest food-producing nation, we have hunger in every single county. What is less well known is that we produce enough food to feed every single citizen. But we do waste 40% of what we produce. It seems crazy, but we do it every day. America throws away more than 400 pounds of food per person annually, or $218 billion worth of food every year. Yet, 42 million Americans are hungry, and less than 1/3 of the food we throw away could feed this entire population. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, which previously used to be called food stamps, is the nation's first line of defense against hunger. SNAP currently feeds more than 42 million Americans, 42 million participants, sorry. But the SNAP benefit does not cover the cost of a low-income meal in 99% of U.S. counties. Here in Jackson County, the average SNAP benefit per meal is $1.86, while the average cost of a low-income meal is $2.37. It's no wonder that people's food stamps run out before the end of the month. I personally have a patient who receives $61 a month in food stamps, and she has to rely on food pantries for the rest of the month for her food. So what can we do about this? First, volunteer at a food pantry, a soup kitchen, or a homeless shelter. Second, become a hunger advocate. Write or call your local legislators to expand SNAP and other child nutrition programs. I know that the Farm Bill comes up for reauthorization this year. Third, educate your friends and your neighbors. Hunger is a problem that can be solved, because in this land of plenty, no one should have to go to bed hungry. Thank you.
Wow. The choir's not here yet, so who wants to do another freedom song? Anybody? I'm willing. I was just thinking of that. All right? The words are easy. Most of you know them, right? Yeah. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. There. So, we have someone here named Josh who's going to talk about the opioid crisis, and this is serious. I have a son who's been in recovery now for 5 years, and I know any day that it could be, we could lose him to it. And so I have friends who've lost loved ones to it, and this didn't have to be. So, Josh.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to look and see a room full of folks. Some of you that I know, by name or by face. Some of you probably who've read my blog, thisappalachialife.com. Some of you who've probably never connected my essay called My Mother Wasn't Trash with me. So, if you've read my essay, if you're one of the 1 million folks who's read it since May, that's me. And, I will tell you that the tremendous amount of support that I received after being so vulnerable and personal in sharing my story, you know, folks look at me and think, you know, I'm just an average guy, and they don't realize that I grew up in systematic intergenerational poverty. And I think we have to tell our stories. And so here I am. And as my students will tell you, I'm a history professor at Brevard College, and I probably couldn't properly describe a biscuit in 10 minutes, so I'm going to read from prepared remarks today to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. My grandmother lives just a few miles from here, but we haven't had a meaningful conversation in years. She didn't acknowledge my college graduation or my graduate school graduation. She didn't wish me the best when I was married 3 years ago. She didn't call when my mother, her daughter, died 2 summers ago. We spoke briefly last year when she realized that after my mother's death, I'd inherited the rundown trailer where she and my grandfather live. Once she realized that I wasn't going to give her any money, she hung up abruptly. My grandmother is addicted to opioid painkillers, and pills have been tearing my family apart for years, as long as I can remember. I don't look like the son or the grandson of addicts. My wife and I live a comfortable middle-class life here in Jackson County. She's a psychologist, I'm a college professor and writer. We raise organic vegetables and free-range chickens for fun, and we're both active in church and in our faith life. And people ask me how I ended up this way, so clearly not impoverished or addicted, and I can offer nothing but a shrug. I don't know. There isn't a magic formula or a secret potion that will allow people like me to escape intergenerational poverty or addiction. It's an accident that some of us are fortunate to experience. However, I do know this. Those of us who escaped are called to bring attention to the issues and the plights of those that we love who haven't yet escaped. Once upon a time, freshly emerged from the soul-crushing realities of poverty, I worshipped at the altar of personal responsibility. I thought that anyone who worked hard enough and made the right decisions could escape poverty. I thought that addicts alone were to blame for their addictions. They should have made better choices and they should just stop doing the drugs. I was wrong. What I failed to realize is that there are systemic forces that bind poor people up in poverty and in addiction. So long as people continue to profit from poor people and addicts, there will be little political will among the elite elected class to bring about real and systematic change. The opioid crisis brings these realities into stark relief. Big Pharma has made billions of dollars off the backs of suffering addicts like my mother and my grandmother, and off the backs of our broken communities. The very pills that break apart families like mine are profit centers for companies like Purdue Pharma. Purdue, the maker of OxyContin, has been deceptive about the addictive qualities of their products. They pushed OxyContin aggressively when it first came out, propping it up with dubious research meant to hide the drug's addictive qualities. Right now in America, 2 million people are addicted to prescription painkillers, and 23% of heroin addicts became addicted to prescription drugs before transitioning to heroin. Every single one of the prescription pills consumed by a drug addict today must be prescribed by a licensed health practitioner and dispensed by a pharmacy initially. Yet somehow, despite the ultra-controlled nature of these dangerous pills, they permeate our rural communities. What will it take for those in power to stop with the lip service and start implementing real solutions? I'll tell you, in my view, it starts with putting new people in power. We must elect leaders who are interested in serving poor people and addicts rather than serving those greedy corporations with vested interests in maintaining their power and keeping poor people poor. Our own Senator Richard Burr received $10,000 from Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, in the 2016 election cycle alone. And he is far from the only elected representative who takes tens of thousands of dollars from the very companies that kill their constituents. Drug companies aren't the only ones to blame either. Federal officials in the Trump administration are continuing every day to talk about this issue by ratcheting up their law and order rhetoric. And let me tell you, as an historian, this law and order rhetoric has never been anything apart from a racist dog whistle.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, these same officials in the Trump administration profit from private prisons and the school-to-prison pipeline while pretending to care. They don't. They care about the money. Here's what I think we have to know and we have to live. Addiction is not a character flaw. Mm-hmm. And we have to stop punishing people for their addictions and instead focus on providing treatment. And more importantly, we have to start punishing the people like drug CEOs and executives who knowingly cause it and the political elites who enable them, instead of punishing the people who are broken in the process as we currently do. It's a special sort of evil. It's a sin to punish broken people while letting the people who hurt them off scot-free. If we're to believe that the long arc of the moral universe bends toward justice, it is because we are right there pulling on that long arc of justice every single day. And we have to continue to pull on that long arc of the moral universe. If it's to bend toward justice, it's our job to bend it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure there isn't a person here who doesn't know someone who's been impacted by this horrible, horrible plague. And if you think it's just a coincidence, think again. Next, we're going to hear from Sylva about workers' rights. But, you know, before you get here, let me just do one more fundamental principle. I'm having fun with these. We will build up the power of people and state-based movements to serve as a vehicle for a powerful moral movement in the country and to transform the political and economic and moral structures of our society. Sylva?
Good evening, good afternoon. Is it still afternoon? Yes.
Yes, still
I'm
afternoon.
Sylva Sparks, and I've been in these parts in Franklin for almost 11 years. And I've learned some things. And one of the things I have to say that I always knew, poverty helps create many of the serious problems in cities and towns. Racism has been acting in creating poverty in black, brown communities. But it's also been the means of creating poverty in white areas. And this is something most people don't realize. And what happened, what they did was divide. The divide and conquer thing really works. They divided workers. They had black and brown workers on one side, and then the white workers on the other side, telling them, no, if you do anything with them, you lose everything. And a number of years ago, there was a meeting held, and something was said to the workers. There were a large number of white workers there, and they were told, look, when they finish knocking black and brown workers down, they're coming after you. And nobody believed this, but it happened. It happened. Many of the unions were destroyed, and the others lost a lot of power. And I don't know how much you know about unions, but unions were the things that gave workers really good things. They gave them decent wages, they gave them benefits, and they also gave them job protection. These were important. This is what the unions did for workers, and workers fought hard for them. And you look around now, and you take, for instance, the teachers' union in one of the places that I won't name the name of it, but it's up north, the UFT, United Federation of Teachers, and they, believe me, the teachers in New York are treated like, whoops, I said it. Oh my. Oops. Yeah. Oh well, that's it. Are treated like professionals, and they're given pretty good salaries and benefits, and their retirement, oh boy, my friends who've retired are doing very nicely. And this is because the teachers fought for it. They fought for it. They were determined, and they got it, and they've kept their union strong because of this. And all I can say, okay, I understand recently I was told that trade unionization in this part of the country is illegal. In North Carolina, it's illegal. And I went like, what? And hey, surprise. All I can say to that is, well, look, people have to begin to realize, workers, and most people who are workers, and in this area, you've got some workers who are still poor. They're in poverty, and your teachers aren't treated very nicely. I mean, they're not given wages that a professional should be receiving. And I'm saying that people who are in these conditions have to begin to recognize, look, we have to all get together, because back in New York when the teachers fought, they fought as a united force. They weren't separated, black and white, no. They fought together because they all wanted the same thing. And this is what workers, I think, want. I think all workers want a good wage so that they can live well. I think that's what all workers want. But it has to be recognized that unless you get together and unite and stand up and fight for it, You're not going to get it because nobody's going to, these guys up top aren't going to give it to you because they'd rather see you, hey, where you are, and they could just say, you know, oh wait, let's ignore them. But this isn't right. And this is people who are working. You know, they're not sitting around doing nothing. They're working.
Amen.
And yet they're not able to live decently because they're not getting paid decently and they don't have the benefits that they need. Insurance. These are things that they should have as workers and they don't. So all I can say is frankly that what has to happen is workers have to get together in these areas and decide, hey, we're going to fight for what we want. Because if you don't, you're not going to get it. There is no way in the world that the guys up at the top are going to give you anything.
They're not going to have a
They're going to try to divide you some more and make the white workers think, well, hey, if you get that, this guy's going to come and take it from you. That's a whole lot of garbage.
Amen.
Because all workers want the same thing. I don't care if you're blue, purple, green, or whatever. They want the same thing. And I'm saying that this is important, that workers have to begin to understand. We have to stand up and start fighting for it. Because if you don't, you're not going to get it. And when I see teachers who are in this area, I had some friends who were talking about moving down here and teach. I said, you don't want to come to North Carolina to teach. You're doing very well. You better stay where you are. Because you come here and you start trying to fight because they're not getting treated the way you're treated where you are. And they're treated that way because they fought for it. And they keep on. And I'm saying, okay, so if it's illegal here, I'm not pushing. I'm not doing that. I'm simply telling you what unions have done for those workers who fought for them and who fought to support them. And I mean worker-oriented unions, because you've got some unions that are in the pockets of the guys who are doing the hiring, and that's not good. So the workers have to be the ones to do this, because if you want to live and live comfortably, and you have a right to, you're doing the work that keeps everything else going. So if you're not getting paid, that's not right. That's not fair, and that's not justice. And I'm saying, and I feel very strongly, yes, I was always a union member. My parents were union members. I was a member of a union that helped us create other unions. We helped create Local 1199 for hospital workers. We helped create worker unions for the maids and people who worked in that area. That's what I did because, hey, I believed in it. And when I say worker-oriented unions, because I found one who, told me, well, no, we can't do this for you. And I realized, okay, the state had them in their pocket. That was it. But I'm saying this is something that you've got to get out there and do something about. And you've got to pass the word. And if you don't, then that means, hey, you don't want it. And if you keep putting people in office who deny you this right, all I can say is, you deserve what you get. And I say this very, very straightforward. I don't play games. And I mean that very seriously. Because, hey, there's no point in sitting around complaining. Oh, well, I don't have this and I don't. That doesn't help. That doesn't get it. The words don't mean it. People have to act. Sitting around talking about it, that does not get it. When hospital workers wanted to have something in New York, they had to get up, they stopped talking, and they got up and worked for it, and they fought for it, and they got it. And this, people can do.
Amen.
I mean, this is something people can do, and all I'm saying is that poverty creates so many problems. Drug addiction, as it was pointed out, and robberies and the things. Poor people are striving to get something, and nobody's going to give them anything. You're going to have to fight for it, and that's one way, so that at least people who are working, you can have something to pass on.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can say is, hey, we've got to get rid of poverty, because in the richest country in the world that tells everybody else how to live and what to do, I think we're doing a pretty bad job of it. And I have to say it, and I mean it, and I've said it before, and I've never been afraid to say it. We're doing a pretty lousy job, because to have homeless people in this country, hungry people,
Shouldn't be.
This to me, I'm sorry. I'm 86 and I stop and say, oh no, I'm fortunate. I've never been really hungry. Though when I was a little girl, my parents didn't have a lot of money. And some days we had, potatoes and onions and a little bit of this. But I was, because my parents understood and were out there striving for it. I still didn't feel badly because I knew somebody was out there doing something. And that's what has to be done. We've got to stop talking. All of us have to stop talking and get up and do something about it, because hunger should not exist here.
Amen. Wow, thank you so much. Let me expand on one point that Selma made. It's not just workers who have to stand together. We all do. Part of this is known as a fusion moral movement, because we are fusing together hungry people, homeless people, people who are having their rights trampled on for any number of reasons, people who need health care. When the Moral Monday movement in 2013 was doing so much work, I had a radio reporter come up and ask me why I was watering down my issue of healthcare by standing with all these other people with all these other issues. And I replied that society is a tapestry. And when we remove the threads, you don't fix it by weaving one thread back in. You fix it by standing together and saying, no, you will not do this anymore. We will not be hungry, we will not be sick, we will not be naked. We will stand together and demand justice. And that's what the Poor People's Campaign was about, is about, and will continue to be about. So next we have Marcia. Marcia, how do you say your last name? Kreitz? Okay, Marcia's going to talk to us a little bit about Clean Slate and a little bit about her own personal story. Welcome, Marcia. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm too short to stand behind the podium. So,
I'll make sure I got you on camera here.
can you hear me?
Yeah, but can you stand that side of the podium?
This side?
Yeah. Right.
Watch me fall down.
No.
How about this?
That's perfect.
Okay. Well, I want to talk, first of all, I am so impressed with the speakers so far, and even more impressed how connected all of those issues are. Every single person who has stood to speak has been connected in some way to the issue that the other person spoke about. I don't look like I spent a lot of time in jail and prison, but I have. And I became very interested as a young person in prison work, and I'm not sure exactly where that came from. Nobody taught me about that, but I got upset about it at one point. And so one of the things that happened to me early in my life was that I worked in a peach shed grading peaches. And let me tell you, that was not easy work, and the pay was 97 cents an hour. So we did that, but what I came across in that peach shed was all of the poverty-stricken people from all cultures and all races. And it was a wake-up call for me. I was the daughter of the mayor of the town and hadn't had any struggles like that. But I came from a family that was very compassionate. My parents were really involved in the community. My father was the mayor, my mother was the teacher, and they were always serving somebody somewhere. So the United Methodist Church played a huge part in my learning to be an activist. When I was in high school, they sent a group of us who were part of a statewide council down to Columbia, South Carolina, and they asked us, ignorant young people, to go in there and communicate with folks who were criminally insane. Now, you can imagine that this was not something we looked forward to. In those days, things were a little worse in prisons than they are now. And these were all men who were criminally insane. And when we walked in the door, it was very hot. There was no air conditioning. There were no screens on the windows. There were flies buzzing everywhere. And we began to just go and talk to these men, not knowing really what to say. And then someone had the idea of singing. And we began to pass out hymn books, and they sang and they cried. And I became attached to the notion that the prison system that we have doesn't work, and it still doesn't work. And I began to follow that path. I was also privileged to work in migrant farm camps in the southern part of South Carolina, and that was quite an opening adventure as well. The group of college students that I was working with were responsible for cooking and cleaning for our own group, which was about 17 people. And then during the week, what we did was care for the children of the migrant farm workers. You just can't imagine the children that came to us who hadn't been bathed in so long, who hadn't been fed, who hadn't had shots. And so we began to work with those children, and we would take them to the doctor, we would take their parents to the doctor, and we saw where they lived. And I can't describe to you how awful the shacks, the little closets that the farm workers had to live in. And so I guess my first activism was going with a colleague to the paper and exposing the situations in which these were. So I don't know how far I got, but it was a wonderful experience to meet these people. I also, the next summer, worked in the that summer investment program, the first part of the War on Poverty.
Mm.
We haven't come very far.
We haven't won a lot of battles yet.
So anyway, I won't go on to all the stuff I've been crazily involved in. But I've started 8 nonprofits in this region, and I'm done.
Oh. Darn.
But the one that has made a real powerful impact on me is Clean Slate. And that came about because I was serving as a chaplain in the Jackson County Women's Detention Center. And a group of women would go in, and we didn't preach, we just listened and offered support and comfort. And what we saw over time was that the same women were coming back again and again because they didn't have any place to go, except back to the same drug-infested or abusive families that they came from. I want to talk just a minute about abuse. And we've heard some about that already, but at least 80% of the women that we serve at Clean Slate were sexually abused before the age of 10. And anyone who has been in a dangerous and abusive situation knows that you don't get over that really quickly. So we decided that we needed to have a place for them to live and recover. And we started Clean Slate. We opened the doors in 2011. We're celebrating our 9th year this month. We now have a wonderful home just up the street here on Allen Street, which was donated to us by Jim Gray. We serve up to 6 women at a time, and they are very busy. I want to point out to you that we want them to learn business skills. And so they make their own organic cleaning products, and they clean houses and offices and other businesses. They make money doing that. Not a whole lot, but they make money doing that. And they get a sense of pride and learn how to interact with clients. So that's been a really good thing. I can't tell you how much I fall in love with these girls when they come. Almost all of them are eager to change, and that's one of the criteria we use when we accept them, is to try to determine, well, how serious are you about turning your life around? because if you're not, this is not going to work. So they go to Meridian, they go to all kind of counseling, they volunteer in the community, they volunteer here, and we keep them really, really busy, which I think is a good thing. We also work with them on nutrition and health and make sure that their teeth are fixed and those kinds of things. And I'm very, very grateful to the people in Jackson County and surrounding areas who have helped make that happen. In the back there are some of the products that the women make and some brochures and cards. And I'd be delighted if you would take some, or if you have questions for me afterwards, I'll stick around. Thanks a lot.
Isn't it amazing how a little love can turn lives around? A little respect. It's just amazing. And
That's our slogan, Love Heals.
there you go, love heals. And let's see. Yeah, I know, but I want to see which one of these I want to read next. We recognize the need to organize at the state and local level. Many of the most regressive policies are being passed at the state level, and these policies will have long and lasting effect past even executive orders. The movement is not from above, but below. We are engaging people who live in poverty, asking them to join with us, to stand with us. We stand with you. We stand with people in need. And this is the way we will make change, nonviolently, lovingly, but certainly willing to go to jail. I'd like now to share my own personal story. Some of you know it. You've seen the photo that I carry around with me so many times. It's this one. This is my son, Mike Danforth. Mike died on April 1st, 2008 because a birth defect was a pre-existing condition. Before the Affordable Care Act, insurance companies were able to deny him coverage simply because he might get sick and interfere with their profits. With no insurance, he was unable to get the care he needed. Rather than make an effort to treat him, doctors demanded thousands of dollars he didn't have up front in cash. They were allowed to refuse him treatment, and the emergency room only had to stabilize him. This is something that a lot of people don't know. You can go to the emergency room. They don't have to find out what's wrong with you. They just have to give you pain pills to address your symptoms. So my son left the emergency room 3 times with big bills, pain pills, and laxatives, when the problem was a malignant tumor blocking his colon. By the time anyone did anything for him, the cancer had spread and there was no cure. He was 33 years old. 10 years ago today, he was at my house in the final days of his life. 10 years ago last Sunday, I brought him home to die. 10 years ago next Sunday, he died. He had to leave his wife to get Medicaid. He applied for disability and it took 37 months. His first check came 9 days after he died. Mike was a waiter, a full-time student with a 3.75 grade point average. He was also a volunteer, helping people to get and stay sober. He was a kind and loving man, but he died because some people think that everyone who isn't wealthy is somehow morally inferior or just looking for a handout. It is not a handout, ever, to save someone's life. It is a moral obligation. And when I tell you my son's story, your first question had better not be, was he working? Because that's the first question I get out of people who don't think poor people deserve anything. Yes, he was working. And when did unemployment become punishable by death in this country? I don't recall that being added to our penal code. Ask people that. The Affordable Care Act would have saved his life. Indeed, it has saved tens of thousands of American lives every single year. It has given 33 million people the access to care they need by allowing them to buy health insurance. In most states, the expansion of Medicaid has opened up access to health care to millions more Americans whose incomes fall below the federal poverty level, but not North Carolina. Our state has refused to take the federal money, and as a result, we have 500,000 people with no access to health care, and 3 to 5 of them die every day. You want to call yourself pro-life? Do something about that. And while 9 million children have had their access to health care through the Children's Health Insurance Program restored after several months of inaction, the fate of 26 million more Americans who get their care through community care clinics is still up in the air because that funding has not been reauthorized. And don't tell me that it's cheap, that we can't afford to do this. Because my son would have cost us maybe $800 to $1,000 a year to give him that colonoscopy and take care of the precancerous polyps. We said no, and then we paid $1 million for his care, and he died anyway. It's much, much more expensive financially and morally. It's wrong. So if you think this is okay, you need to stop calling yourself pro-life. You need to stop calling yourself a person of faith, and I mean any faith. You need to go and read the account of Judgment Day in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 23, where Jesus reminds us that when we mistreat the hungry, the sick, or the stranger, we are rejecting and refusing to help God's self. You who vilify and marginalize the poor need to repent. You need to vote to secure the health care of these, your fellow human beings. Mike was my son. I'm reliving his final days again, for the 10th time this year. It doesn't get easier. I'll never get him back. But I can and I will resist every attempt to deny the rest of America the care they need, the care my beloved son never got. We will do our work in a nonpartisan way. We're not talking Democrat or Republican. We're not talking right and left. We're talking right and wrong. No elected officials or candidates get the stage or serve on the state organizing committee of the Poor People's Campaign. So we still have 2 more of these to read. I'll get to them. But there was supposed to be another song here, so who wants to do another freedom song? I can do these all day. I've been known to. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom way. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom way. All right, we have another faith leader coming to speak. Jeffrey? That's Jeffrey. Hi, so nice to meet you.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm supposed to be Tanya. Some of you have the program know Tanya was supposed to be here. Tanya and I share the pastor at Coley Baptist Church. She's rarely confused for a white, southern-born, male Baptist fundamentalist pastor, though I sometimes am. I am not. In fact, if Patty hadn't hinted at this ahead of time, I would have said fundamentalism in any of its religious, racial, cultural, political, social forms should be confronted at every level. Thank you. In what I'm going to say, I'm going to tell a few stories. Please know that the stories are real, though I've changed some names to protect pastoral confidentiality. I'm drawn to the words that describe this movement as a call to moral revival. Revival is a word that I know well as a pastor, so let's talk about repenting. Yes, if this is a revival, then we must repent. Revival cannot, in good conscience, be a call to others to repent without asking us to do the same. But repent of what? Racism? Yes, of course, except that among us today are some of the least racist people I know. Homophobia? Yes, no doubt. But among the welcoming and affirming community of citizens and people of faith in Jackson County, many of you stand out as model moral agents for radical hospitality and inclusion. So what repentance can call us to address the injustices of poverty and racism and patriarchy, of fear and of its violent consequences? Is there anything of which we must repent? Of course. We must repent from our dislike of people. We must be converted from just addressing issues of poverty into knowing real people who are poor, knowing the names of those who suffer the injustice of racism, caring for those who are made to feel guilt and shame for their orientation, giving hope to those who are afraid and whose fear causes them to do desperate things. The most effective thing I have heard today have been the stories that you have personally told. You see, it does little good for us to sit in our lazy boys and shout at the television, though I admit I do that.
It helps.
Or listen to NPR and berate the latest presidential policy of hate and bigotry, though sometimes that is cathartic. And frankly, it feels like it does little good to call and email my congressional representatives who do not respond to me, nor listen to me, nor represent me politically or socially. We can only save this nation and lead to a moral revival if we learn to love the people in our community, live in brotherhood and sisterhood alongside them. We must be converted to loving people and knowing them. In my Christian life and faith, this is second only to the call to love God. For those with great faith, or some faith, or even no faith, all of us save ourselves by serving another. Unfortunately, too many of us have adopted a mindset best represented by a t-shirt slogan I saw on campus at Western Carolina not long ago. It said, "The more people I know, the more I like my dog." By the way, I looked that quote up. Supposedly it's attributed to Mark Twain, though it's a little iffy. If that cynicism seeps into our hearts, then moral revival will be replaced with insubstantial inaction. We will not be a movement from below, principle number 9 that you read just a minute ago, as the Poor People's Campaign seeks to become, unless we live with people in the midst of their crisis. I would like to humbly suggest that this campaign also needs to become a movement from within. For if the people we discuss are not within our hearts, within our prayers, within our daily lives, then all we will do is address policy and not people. Now, please hear me clearly. We need to address policy, but never disembodied. So what are we to do? Not simply to learn to embrace feminism, but get to know Felicia and her son Marcus. Felicia, who has suffered abuse from her husband, who will not grant her a divorce. We cannot simply commit politically to socialized medicine without also knowing Scott, who has Obamacare, but also has no ride to the hospital when his doctor tells him he needs a scan, and no ride to the pharmacy when he needs medicine. It does little good to post on Facebook about immigration policy. Trust me, I've tried it.
Oh, we all have.
Unless we get to know Lorenzo and Maria and their young daughter and hear their story and let them teach us a bit of Spanish and help them find a job to pay for their immigration papers to be renewed annually. We can wag our heads at the revised and rampant racism that we see and hear around us, but Rashad would benefit most if we respect his opinions, believe his stories of injustice, and ask questions about what he needs without assuming that we know best what he needs. It turns out that poverty and injustice both have many names. The poor are not anonymous. We have failed to know their names. Forgive us, Lord.
Thank you so much. Stories are a big part of this movement. I was a newspaper reporter for 30 years, and one of my jobs was to talk about how public policy affected human beings. It kills some. It belittles some. It robs some of dignity. My son wanted nothing more than to be able to pay his own bills with his own handwritten checks. But because he couldn't get disability for 37 months, he had to let other people make those payments for him. Also, when you total up the amount of money that we spend on safety net programs, if we just made everybody pay people a living wage, we wouldn't have to, that would be a wash. That would be a wash. If people could afford to buy their own food, they wouldn't need food stamps. If people could afford to pay the rent or a mortgage, they wouldn't need public assistance for housing. This is the call to action. Get to know poor people and their stories. Let them know that we stand with them. Invite them to stand with us, arm in arm, heart to heart, in love, with respect. This is what we need to see in this moral revival. We need to understand that we are all human, that we all deserve the same things: love and food and shelter, respect, dignity. These are the things. Now, I know some people have left. Is there a box up there for the pledge cards? Let's do this. If you want to bring that forward, let's do this a little like an altar call, because I grew up Baptist. I'm not Baptist anymore, sorry. I grew up in a church that blamed me for my own sexual abuse when I was 3 years old, because women are the daughters of Eve and we are all guilty of seduction. So while I rejected that brand of being Baptist, I don't reject Jeffrey's brand of being Baptist. Jeffrey, truly you exemplify the Baptist ethic of all of us are saints. So if you have a pledge card and you want to drop it up here, come on up here. I'm going to put it right here. I'm not going to ask you to bow your head and accept Jesus or anything else. What I am going to ask you to do, if you're willing, is to commit to join us to make this a better place, to make this a more just nation, to make our society more kind. So bring them on up. We've got a few in there already. And that's our call to action. And if you want to donate to the campaign, you can drop cash there, or you can go online to poorpeoplescampaign.org and donate there. That's probably the most efficient way to do it. Again, that's poorpeoplescampaign.org. And you're going to want to text ACTION to 90975 to sign up to become a movement activist. That's text the word ACTION, ACTION, to 90975.
Where do we put the money? Where do we put the money?
You can put the money in there if you want. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. And now comes the Q&A. Does anyone have any questions about the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival?
What is it?
It's a movement. It's not a moment. It's not an organization. We don't have members or chapters. We are human beings coming together to demand justice for our brothers and sisters. It's going to kick off starting on Mother's Day. There's going to be 6 weeks of sustained action. We had originally wanted 30 states to sign on. We have 40. Plus the District of Columbia. We had originally hoped to get 1,000 people pledging to stand for arrest if need be. to do nonviolent civil disobedience. Right now, we have more than 1,100 in North Carolina who've pledged that already.
What would you be protesting that would warrant being arrested?
If you show up at the General Assembly building, I know because I've done this numerous times now, and you want to speak to the leadership about whatever issue, they will not let you in. And when you say, well, I'll just sit out here in the hall and wait, they'll call the police and have you arrested. I've been carted off 3 times from Raleigh alone. I know the chief of the General Assembly Police, and when he sees me and I'm not there with the whole Moral Monday group, he'll just say, so you're not going to get arrested today? So we do have a legal team. We have legal teams in every state who will help us if we do get arrested. I have yet to have to pay an attorney for any of my arrests. So these are some of the things that when you donate, that's some of the places your money's going. This is, as I said, a movement. It may seem disjointed and not formal, but it's very, very carefully planned and organized. And we will continue to advocate beyond that 40 days. That 40 days is the original. And different days of the week will be designated for different things. That plan is not public yet. I've seen bits of it, but they keep me in the dark so I can't, mess it up by speaking out of turn. So I know nothing.
And who is they?
They are the leaders of this campaign, the organizers of this campaign. The 2 conveners of the campaign are Bishop Dr. William Barber II, who many of you are familiar with. He's the former president of the NAACP and the architect of the Moral Monday movement. The other leader, the other co-convener, is Reverend Liz Theo-Harris, who is with the Kairos Center at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. She's a pretty remarkable person. And there are, both Reverend Barber and Reverend Theo-Harris have written books. Reverend Barber's is about the Third Reconstruction and how now is the time. And Reverend Theo-Harris's book is called Always With Us. And that all comes from that quote from Jesus when the woman is pouring the expensive ointment on him, and his disciples say she should have sold that and given the money to the poor. And Jesus said, the poor you will always have with you. He did not say it like this, you'll always have the poor. The way he said it was an admonition to work to abolish poverty. Yeah, we'll probably always have it because the things we still have with us include greed, avarice, the hunger for power, and that's part of human nature. And so what Jesus was asking of us, at least according to Liz Theo-Harris's book, is for us to stand to help eliminate poverty. Because giving people something, giving you a one-time gift of a meal or a box of food is one thing. Helping you get a job that will allow you to survive on your own and lift you out of poverty is the right and moral thing to do. Yes?
So by putting their email address on here, they will get further information?
Right. I have to go home and input all of these into the spreadsheet, so I hope your writing was legible. Yes?
Would you give the number to text to one more time?
Okay, the number to text the word action to 90975. All right, everybody got that who wants it? Any more questions?
Can you repeat the hashtag?
The hashtags are Poor People's Campaign, Moral Resistance, and Moral Revival. Moral movement too. You can do moral movement as well. Although that's probably more closely associated with North Carolina's moral movement. Any other questions? Yes?
Those 11
Oh, I didn't finish them, did I?
Well, where do we find them again?
PoorPeoplesCampaign.org. And, I almost forgot. We still have 3 more. We will do our work in a nonpartisan, I already said that, didn't I? We just have 2 more. We uphold the need to do a season of sustained moral direct action as a way to break through the tweets and shift the moral narrative. We are demonstrating the power of people coming together across issues and geography and putting our bodies on the line to the issues that are affecting us all. And finally, the campaign and all of its participants and endorsers embrace nonviolence. Violent tactics or actions will not be tolerated. I believe in nonviolence. I always have. I've been committed to it since I was a teenager demonstrating against the Vietnam War. So finding Reverend Barber with his commitment to nonviolence is huge for me. And I think we can do this. I wouldn't be affiliated with this if I didn't think we could do it. We have to. It's time. And so, we're not going to have a Hindu prayer? Okay. Go in peace. Take care of each other. Yes?
Let's thank the community table for allowing us to use the wonderful stage.
Thank you to the community table. And as I said, go in peace, love each other, help each other.
A couple more announcements. There are a couple other events coming up. There's a candidate.
Why don't you come on up here and take the mic and tell us about them before everybody gets their coats on. Don't leave yet. Don't go yet.
Indivisible is sponsoring a candidates forum next Tuesday at the library from 6:30 to 8:30. We are a nonpartisan group. These are people that are running for the U.S. House of Representatives. Also, Wednesday, April the 4th, Indivisible has been doing Wake Up Wednesdays from 12 to 1 at the fountain. We've been picking different topics that we are concerned about. This next Wednesday, April the 4th, is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to be joined by some kids who've been reading some works by Dr. King, and we'd love to have you come help support that. So 12 to 1 next Wednesday at the fountain.
Take the flyers.
Flyers are here to remind you of those. Okay?
Yes.
Take anything that's on the table.
Don't take the tables, though. They need the tables. Also, if you are not registered to vote at your current address, please register at the back table. This is so important. We must vote.
Yes.
That, too, is a moral obligation. All right, now I'll do a tap. No, I won't. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie, for organizing this with us.
Thanks for all your work.